There is something you have probably said to yourself more than once. I just cannot focus. You sit down to work. You open what you need. And within minutes, sometimes seconds, something pulls you away. A thought, a sound, a sudden need to check something that did not matter 30 seconds ago. You go back. You try again. The same thing happens. And over time, a quiet conclusion forms. My attention span is broken. Maybe it always was. Maybe this is just who I am. But here is what nobody has told you clearly. The problem is not your attention span. Your attention span is not broken. It is not shorter than previous generations. It is not damaged by your phone or your habits or some neurological flaw you were born with. Your attention span is actually working exactly as it was designed to work. The real reason you cannot focus has nothing to do with how long you can pay attention. It has everything to do with what your brain has learned to expect. And once you understand what that is, everything changes. First, let's understand what attention actually is. Most people think attention is like a muscle. You either have a strong one or a weak one. You either have the discipline to use it or you don't. But neuroscientists describe attention differently. Attention is a selection process. At every moment, your brain is receiving an enormous amount of information. From your environment, your body, your thoughts, your memories. Far more than it can consciously process at once. So it selects. It decides what gets conscious awareness and what gets filtered out. That selection process is governed by one primary question your brain is constantly asking. What here is most relevant to my survival and well-being right now? This is not a conscious question. You do not decide to ask it. Your brain asks it automatically, constantly, beneath awareness. And it routes your attention toward whatever the answer is. For most of human history, this system worked perfectly. The environment changed slowly. Threats were physical and obvious. The most relevant thing in any moment was usually also the most important thing. But something has changed, and your brain's attention system has not caught up. The real problem, your brain has been trained on the wrong signal. Here is what has happened to most people's brains without them realizing it. Every time you felt bored or uncomfortable and reached for your phone, your brain recorded something. It recorded that discomfort is a signal to seek stimulation. Every time you switched tasks when something got difficult, your brain recorded that difficulty is a signal to escape. Every time you checked a notification mid-focus, your brain recorded that interruption is normal and expected. These recordings are not memories. They are trained responses. Neural pathways that have been reinforced so many times that they now activate automatically before you have made any conscious decision. Psychologists call this the reinforcement of avoidance behavior. Every time you avoid discomfort through distraction, the avoidance pathway gets stronger. The next threshold for discomfort gets lower. You need less difficulty, less boredom, less friction before the escape response fires. This is why it feels like your attention span has shrunk. It has not. What has shrunk is your tolerance for the discomfort that deep focus requires. And this is a completely different problem with a completely different solution. What focus actually requires. Here is something nobody teaches you about deep focus. It is uncomfortable. Not slightly uncomfortable. Genuinely, noticeably uncomfortable, especially at the beginning. When you sit down to do difficult cognitive work, your brain initially resists. There is a period, usually the first 10 to 20 minutes, where the work feels hard, where your mind generates reasons to stop, where distraction feels genuinely appealing. This resistance is not a sign that something is wrong. It is a normal neurological response to the demand for sustained cognitive effort. Researchers call this the engagement curve. Almost every meaningful cognitive task begins with a period of resistance before flow becomes possible. The people who appear to have exceptional focus are not people who never feel that initial resistance. They are people who have learned to stay inside the resistance long enough for it to pass. Most people never find out what is on the other side of that resistance because they leave before reaching it. They interpret the initial discomfort as evidence that they cannot focus, when it is actually the beginning of the focus process. Understanding this changes the entire experience. The discomfort at the beginning of a focus session is not a problem. It is a doorway, and you have to walk through it, not around it. The dopamine connection. There is another layer to this that neuroscience has only recently made clear. Your brain runs on a neurochemical called dopamine. Most people think dopamine is about pleasure. You get dopamine when something feels good. But that is not quite right. Dopamine is actually about anticipation. It spikes not when you receive a reward, but when you expect one. And in the modern environment, your brain has been conditioned to expect small, frequent, unpredictable rewards at an extraordinary rate. Every notification is a potential reward. Every scroll is a potential reward. Every check of a message is a potential reward. Your brain does not know in advance whether the next notification will be important or irrelevant. And that unpredictability, that variable reward schedule, is the most powerful dopamine driver that exists. Here is what this does to focus. When your brain is running on a high-frequency dopamine expectation cycle, sustained work on a single task feels neurochemically flat by comparison. Not because the work is not valuable, but because it does not deliver the rapid, unpredictable reward signals your brain has been trained to expect. The feeling of being unable to focus is, in many cases, a dopamine mismatch. Your brain's reward circuitry has been calibrated to a frequency that single-task focus work cannot match. The solution is not willpower. Willpower is finite and exhausts quickly. The solution is recalibration, gradually adjusting the threshold at which your brain's reward system is satisfied. What actually damages focus, and it is not your phone. Here is something that might surprise you. Your phone is not the primary cause of your focus problem. Your phone is a symptom delivery mechanism. The underlying cause is something simpler and more fundamental. It is the absence of boredom. Boredom is not a negative state to be eliminated. Boredom is a neurological condition in which your brain is not receiving external stimulation and is therefore forced to generate its own. Boredom is what activates the default mode network, the system responsible for creativity, self-reflection, future planning, and the integration of complex ideas. When you never allow yourself to be bored, when every moment of potential boredom is immediately filled with a screen, a sound, a distraction, you deprive your brain of the processing time it needs to integrate experience and generate the kind of thinking that sustained focus requires. Research shows that people who regularly experience boredom perform better on creativity tasks and show stronger capacity for sustained attention than people who consistently avoid it. This seems counterintuitive, but the mechanism makes sense. A brain that has practiced sitting with nothing, that has learned to generate its own engagement, is a brain that can sustain focus when it matters. A brain that has never practiced boredom is a brain that panics the moment external stimulation disappears. You do not need to consume less. You need to practice stillness more. The two things are different. The environment your brain is trying to focus inside. There is one more layer most people never consider. Your focus does not exist in isolation. It exists inside an environment. And that environment is either designed to support sustained attention or to destroy it. Most people try to focus inside environments that were not designed for focus at all. Notifications enabled. Phone within reach. Multiple tabs open. Background noise present. Other people's demands accessible at any moment. And then they wonder why focusing feels impossible. Here is the truth about willpower and environment. Willpower can override an environment for a short time, but environment always wins in the long run. A person with average willpower inside a well-designed environment will consistently outperform a person with exceptional willpower inside a poorly designed one. This is not a motivational point. It is an engineering point. If you want to focus, you have to design the conditions for focus before you sit down to work, not fight against the conditions while trying to work. Remove the phone from the room. Not silence it. Remove it. Research shows that the mere presence of a smartphone on a desk, even face down, even silent, measurably reduces available cognitive capacity. Your brain uses resources monitoring the possibility of a notification even when the phone is not in use. Close everything that is not the task. Not minimize. Close. Each additional open window is a source of potential distraction that your brain's selection process must continuously assess and dismiss. Define the session before it begins. Decide exactly what you will work on, for how long, and what done looks like. Vague work sessions are the easiest to abandon. Specific, bounded sessions with a clear endpoint are the easiest to complete. Your environment is not separate from your focus. It is the foundation your focus stands on. But the identity, I am rebuilding my focus, is a completely different instruction. It acknowledges where you are without making it permanent. It frames every session, successful or not, as part of a process rather than evidence of a fixed condition. The brain does not just respond to what is true. It responds to what it believes is true. And what it believes is true is heavily influenced by the language you use to describe yourself to yourself. You have not lost your ability to focus. You have trained certain patterns that are working against it. And patterns, unlike fixed traits, can be retrained. The evidence is in the neuroscience. The mechanism is in the habits. And the starting point is exactly where you are right now. Here is what all of this means for you. You are not someone with a broken attention span. You are someone whose brain has been trained by an environment optimized for distraction to expect a kind of stimulation that deep focus cannot provide. That training happened gradually, without your awareness, through thousands of small repeated choices. And it can be undone the same way it was created. Gradually, through repeated small choices that give your brain new evidence about what to expect and what to predict. The discomfort at the beginning of a focus session is not your enemy. It is the signal that the process has started. Walk through it enough times and it gets shorter. Walk through it enough times and what is waiting on the other side, the clarity, the depth, the quality of thought that only sustained focus produces, becomes something your brain begins to seek rather than avoid. You were not built for distraction. You were built for depth. The only question is whether you are willing to practice your way back to it. If this video gave you a different way of understanding your own mind, subscribe to GrowDaily. Every week we go deeper into the psychology and neuroscience of how your brain actually works, and what you can do about it.